Well, welcome. I'm so glad you've taken time out of your busy schedule to join us, and we never take that for granted. I try and make sure that I bring you really interesting guests that are going to challenge how you look at the world so you can show up and negotiate a better life. And today is definitely no exception. I'm really excited to introduce you to Christian Ray Flores. Welcome, Christian. It's so great to have you here.
Cindy, it's a privilege. I really appreciate you having me.
You've got such an interesting background. And for those of you who don't know him, Christian's a high performance coach, an entrepreneur, an international recording artist of all things. He's a philanthropist. He's got a story that spans, not only continents, but industries, lots of interesting stories to tell. He's got a master's in economics. He's fluent in 4 languages, and he has built himself and advised startups. He's raised millions of dollars for businesses, for missions. He coaches top executives and founders and creatives on how to sustain that peak performance. And today we're going to be talking about a lot of that, and in general about negotiating resilience and reinvention in our lives. So Christian, from a background as a child refugee in Chile, you became this pop star in Eastern Europe. You launched award-winning media ventures. You lead global philanthropy, events. How did your childhood experience, or did your childhood experience impact on your success, do you think? And if so, how?
I think most people, if you follow any person who is sort of extra driven, right? Most of those people have painful experiences in the past.
Okay.
That just seems to be the pattern. Not everybody, but I would say the vast majority are people who are somehow they have fire in their belly, in their heart that drives them to certain things. And one of the secrets of I think holistic success is to figure out that fuel and purify the good fuel from the bad fuel.
Yeah, I love that.
So, so yes, the answer is absolutely, absolutely, And we can talk about we can talk about hours for about this. I would say, what we run from something, it's actually really good motivation if you frame it well, right? So, like for example, my success doesn't make usually the descriptions in podcasts and other things because it sort of seems less glamorous as my success as a husband and
Oh, I love
as a
that.
parent is driven because my I come from basically this I am the third generation of broken homes,
Wow. Yeah.
right? So that's an example of negative
Yeah.
motivation that's actually really helpful and healthy because I basically decided at some point in my 20s, in my mid 20s, I'm like, I have no idea how to build a family.
Yeah.
But I definitely am not okay with not figuring it out. And if I do figure it out, I'll prioritize it above everything else,
Yeah.
right?
I
So
love that.
that's an example of negative motivation,
Yeah.
right?
Well, and
Uh,
let's dig in a bit more on that because when you said that good fuel, bad fuel, and how we
yeah,
sort of distill it and purify, that really resonated with me. And it's funny when you say about coming from a place. My husband's always saying, "Oh my God, Cindy, you're so driven." And then as he heard about some of my experiences growing up, he's like, "Wow, that's where it comes from."
that's where it comes from. That's exactly it.
Definitely
Yeah,
where
yeah.
that drive comes from. So maybe for our listeners, tell a little bit more about how they can look for the good versus bad fuel in their life and how maybe they can use it to propel themselves in healthier ways.
Well, I would say, look, first of all, bad fuel, right? It could be anything on a very base level. If you are very anxious regularly, chronically, I would say, right? Like you wake up and you're anxious, you're behind, or you're stressed out, or you're worried quite a bit. That's bad fuel, straight up,
Yeah.
right? And that anybody, even the most gifted people, can end up in that place.
Yeah.
And it's like pre even hitting burnout, you already are falling behind because you can't create anything new
Yeah.
when you're in survival mode. So to me, that's the most dangerous bad fuel kind of example, right? And we know statistically about half of Americans are in that place right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
Because this is mental health. Do you struggle with anxiety on a regular basis on a very basic level? So that's a lot of people on bad fuel.
Yeah.
That on the upside, look, if most people are on bad fuel, what's going to happen to you if you switch to good fuel? You know, you become incredibly competitive in a good way. Competitive meaning you can do
Yeah.
better than other people because people are stuck. You can create things.
Yeah.
So sort of the switch from bad fuel to good fuel looks like, can you get yourself from anxious, worried, almost like behind, like drowning sort of feeling to creative, clear flow state
Yeah.
on demand every day?
Yeah.
Yes or no? And the answer is no. Get on that
Yeah.
because that's fun. That's foundational stuff, right?
Yeah.
But then if you go deeper, you can talk about bad fuel like hate, resentment,
Yes.
victim mentality.
Yeah.
That's bad fuel as well, obviously. And that's those are deeper waters that you have to sort of fish for the stuff, right? A
Yeah.
little bit more. And that's definitely worth addressing. So, for example, for me, bad fuel on that level would be when I'm pursuing something like, I want to be famous. That was sort of my first career
Yeah.
was a pop artist. And
Yeah.
like shockingly, it was super successful right away, which is like both a gift and a curse.
Yeah.
But over time, I look back and I go, oh, a lot of the bad fuel was I just want to be accepted. I want to be loved. I want to
Yeah.
guarantee love.
Yeah.
So that drives you. Then you get there and you realize that that kind of thing doesn't guarantee love, doesn't guarantee acceptance at all. And you need to be able to accept yourself for first, right? Or bad fuel can be sort of be better than other, prove yourself to by competition, for example.
Yeah.
And I think you and I offline talked a little bit about negotiation versus
Yeah.
competition. And to me, that was a massive thing because I definitely even grieve sometimes
Yeah.
the years in at the top of my game with some of the top creatives, just the most gifted people who are my friends. But deep down, there's a little bit of bad fuel where I go, I'm gonna beat them.
Yeah.
My hit's gonna be bigger than his hit. I'm gonna get a bigger crowd. I'm gonna
Yeah.
make more money. Instead of going, my gosh, you're amazing. Can we write a song together?
Yes. Well, I love
Can
that
we go
choice.
on tour together? Can we cross promote? Can we exchange ideas? Can you teach me this technique in whatever area in show business, right? So that's bad fuel, right? So anyway, but you get the idea, right?
Yeah. Well, I love that. It's funny what you just described is sort of at the core of what, I call the art of feminine negotiation, hence that this podcast is about seeing that different rather than trying to beat somebody
Yes.
out, how we can actually amplify our success often by building relationships, building networks, building
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
which I know. Now, when you talked about victimhood as well as one of those bad fuels, it really struck a chord with me about that idea where we get to choose the story that we're going to buy into. Like, it'd be easy for me to buy into a victimhood story from things from my past. And that just sucked out. You talk about bad fuel. Like that is a
Hmm.
recipe to just keep spiraling down. And yet
Absolutely.
you're not going to be magnetic. You're not going to attract people. You're not going to be able to attract success to you. I wonder what your thoughts are on that idea about choosing the story that you buy into.
People think of memory. I remember I was there as something objective.
Yeah,
And it's nothing could be further from the truth,
that's
right?
true.
Like, in fact, we literally reinterpret the past and what happened all the time.
Yeah,
The past is an actually very fluid thing
yeah,
in reality, right?
yeah,
Because we are looking at it very subjectively. You're interpreting the past. You're not really experiencing the past. You're interpreting the past. So reframing the things that can make you either a victim or a victor,
yeah,
that's a massive sort of ability and massive capability for somebody
yeah.
because everybody has drama.
Yes.
Everybody has trauma.
Yeah.
There's no person walking this earth who doesn't have bad things happen to them or even sometimes because of them and to them at the same time or independently from them. But, my first literally my first childhood memory is my mom standing outside of this concentration camp, which they used soccer fields as concentration camps because they want to cramp a lot of people there. And I'm holding her hand. She's trying to pass food. She's negotiating with one of the guards and there's like a paper bag, I think. She was trying to pass food for my dad who was inside. And that was literally my first childhood memory.
Wow.
And then it grows from there. So I've seen,
Yeah.
I was in a refugee facility. He was released. He was lucky. We're in a refugee facility. We saw poverty. We went to from Chile to Germany to Russia to Africa. I changed 4 countries by age 7 you know so there's the unsettled unstructured sort of life was the epitome of a descriptor of who I was. And most people say, hey, children need stability, predictability, safety. Yeah, I had none of that
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
So
Forget
you can,
countries, continents. My goodness.
yeah, yeah, it's like it's insane, right? So I saw civil war in Africa. We went back to Russia when my parents got divorced, massive trauma for me. And then I was out of college. Before I was out of college, the Soviet Union falls apart. So I see
Yeah.
like tanks in the streets, attempted coups. So all of that stuff, you can choose any of that stuff and create an identity anchored
Yeah.
in victimhood. So easy, you know.
Yeah.
Or or you can reframe all that stuff and you can say, I am completely unafraid of uncertainty.
Yeah.
And that's a superpower. Most people are afraid of uncertainty. I'm not,
Yeah. And see it
you
as
know.
a gift. And I want to put a
It's a huge
real
gift.
pin for our listeners in that, when you said about that object, everybody assumes that their memories or their past, that there's some objective reality to it and that there's
Right.
nothing further than the truth. And I mean, one great way to see that is with our siblings, right? I mean, my
Oh,
God,
totally.
and
Yeah.
totally different experiences having been in the same place at the
Yeah.
same time
Yeah.
and just vastly different recollections, right?
Yeah,
I
absolutely. Yeah,
and
it's
I want to put
insane.
a pin in that for our listeners because we're seeing so much global conflict today. And I think a lot of it stems really at its heart from that everybody is so convinced about the rightness, the
Hmm.
correctness of their perspective, as if
Yes.
some objective truth out there, as opposed to everybody bringing different perspectives and experiences in how they see it. So I think that's such an important point. And I want to circle back with you, Christian, about because your journey, if you will, is really sort of a masterclass in resilience and
Hmm.
reinvention and impact. And I want to talk first out of those a bit about resilience. Like how do we negotiate a mindset of internal resilience that allows that? And you've spoke a bit about it, but it really dig down to how to
Hmm.
push past those negative experiences, get back up and keep moving towards success. Getting more resilient so we can dust ourselves off and use it to fuel us, as you say.
Well, if you think at interactions with the outside world in like traumatic obstacles, injustices, all kinds of things, self-imposed problems, which
Yeah.
are the source as well. There's basically three states you can be in. One is you can be fragile. The second one, it's like the neutral state, which is resilience. So we talk a lot about, okay, if you don't get, if you don't, you fall down, you get up, you keep going.
Yeah.
That's a huge deal. And it is a huge deal. And it's really important. But honestly, I would say the best thing to do is to aim for the higher state, which is anti-fragility. And anti-fragility, it was coined by this guy, Nassim Taleb, in a book called Anti-Fragility, I believe. And it's a great concept because it taps into the essence of human nature as already. Everybody's anti-fragile already.
Hmm.
And I can give you like a physical example. A physical example is the gym.
Yeah.
What is the essence of getting in shape? It's actually creating stress and fatigue and depletion
Yeah.
to us only to a certain degree,
Yeah.
where and then resting from it so that your natural capacity to build bone density, muscle, cognitive ability will kick in. This is the natural capacity.
Yeah.
And you actually become faster, stronger, more flexible.
Yeah.
That's anti-fragility in the physical sort of realm, right?
Yeah.
But that same principle actually works in every other realm. And what happens is it clashes with our primal desire to protect, to not push past,
Yeah.
to not go into unfamiliar places, to seek comfort
Yes.
and seek safety. That's primal as well. So those two things really clash.
Yeah.
And basically, anti-fragility is your ability to, in a very, very intentional way, every day, teach yourself, okay, if you feel that this is unsafe, you seek comfort, et cetera, you don't like uncertainty. But actually, the best thing you can do about this is seek a little bit discomfort, a little bit uncertainty, take some risks, push yourself, strain, do hard things.
Yeah. I
And
think
if you,
that's great that you gave the gym example. I've never thought of it in that way before. And I'm so glad you spoke to anti-fragility because I'd read some of your stuff and that word was coming up,
yeah,
anti-fragility.
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
like, what the heck? back. We're going to have to explore that. So I'm so glad you did. And if you see me laughing, I was not laughing at the concept. I'm laughing because I recently was in the Yukon dog sledding and ended up
Whoa,
had
that's
a dog.
amazing.
It was amazing. I loved it. And on our last day, had an accident, ended up fracturing my pelvis, which I didn't know at the time. So I got back on the dog sled for the like an idiot, right?
Oh, that's terrible.
But I've
Wow.
had this recent epiphany because of that. That is exactly what you're just talking about, Christian, because I found myself guarding against the pain. And I realized the recovery depended on me stopping that guarding and allowing myself to just relax into pushing past that discomfort to
That's
allow
exactly
me
it.
to get
Yeah.
stronger. So it's such a beautiful analogy. So, now you have reinvented yourself, many times, and a lot of
Yeah.
people say that, but you truly, from pop star status to high performance coach, I mean, you've crossed the
Yeah.
across the genre sphere. What tips would you have for our listeners who may feel stuck and need to negotiate a reinvention of themselves? What tips would you give them?
Well, a couple of things. One is this. I think fundamentally life is about seasons, right?
Mm,
And I think sometimes we just forget that we evolve
yeah.
and our interests, our passions, our needs, our desires, our goals, they all change. So, when people go, well, I'm the same person, but I don't feel the same way about the situation I'm in, for, let's say, in my career.
Yeah.
That's very natural. It really is. Like, so on a macro level, that's one thing. So you are a student first, then you become a practitioner of the thing, then you become a master of the thing, then you become a sage of the thing.
Mm,
And those are literally universal rhythms of life. And when you become a master, for example, and you are absolutely happy to hustle, to build stuff, to just complete, like enter into a burning building to do whatever, right? The
yeah.
thing that you're passionate about, right?
Yeah.
And then eventually that wears off. And that's because from the inside out, you don't want to build things, you want to build legacy. You want to invest in other people, not just in yourself, et cetera, et cetera. So nothing of it is bad or good, it just is.
Yeah.
So in between seasons, people get super confused.
Yeah.
Most people that come to my coaching program are usually they're not students going into practitioners because when you're a student going into practitioner, you think you're invincible and you don't have no needs whatsoever, right? You're just clueless, right? You're
So
absolutely
true.
clueless, right? Like I have a kid graduating in May, my middle child from business school, and she is completely going to rule the world. But
Yeah.
you know, and,
Convinced they
and
know
she,
it all.
yeah, exactly. And she actually will, I think, eventually, but what she'll discover pretty soon is that it's not as easy as she thinks it is. That
Yeah.
she's going to she needs to develop some skills and stuff like that. But that's sort of but most people that come and for me to help is there are people that are going in between practitioner and master, or between master and sage.
Yeah.
The in between space is super uncomfortable.
Yeah.
You feel confused, you feel lost, you don't know what's going on, like you lost your mojo, but it's
Yeah.
not. It's just a natural process, right? So
Yeah.
so that's basically one thing. And I would say for me, I don't know, I always had this, I think it's because of the lack of predictability and certainty in my life. One of the benefits of the upsides was that the minute I feel strategically like long term, this doesn't fit me,
Yeah.
even if it's a good thing on the surface,
Yeah.
like success. The minute I see it as, okay, if I can project this forward for 20 years, definitely not where I want to end up. I can jump
Yeah.
like pretty dramatically,
Yeah.
sometimes irresponsibly, quite frankly,
You and
but
me both.
yeah, so, but I can jump. And then when you jump, there's like you sort of grow wings as you're falling,
Yeah.
and I think you're completely on the other side of the spectrum from me, which I'm definitely on the extreme side because
Yeah.
of my background. And
Yeah.
so I'm trying to not be that person
Yeah.
too much. But I would say on the other side of the spectrum, you can be so fearful of failure or fearful of uncertainty, really wanting a guarantee of things. That eventually leads to being stuck as well and
Yeah.
burned out because you just don't pivot, you don't experiment, you don't take risks,
Yeah.
you don't sometimes you don't listen to this deep intuition that we all have, this voice, this like the whisper of the soul,
Yeah.
and we all hear it, we just don't heed it,
Yes.
right? And that's sort of the idea is that you
Yeah.
don't heed it, and then now you're living sort of inauthentically. And sometimes this inauthentic misalignment can last for a decade.
Yeah.
And you
Yes.
go, oh my gosh, but honestly, you need to take responsibility that it's been going on for a decade. Why didn't you listen? Why didn't you ask for help or take risks and
Yeah.
things like that? So,
Well, and I want to really put a pin in that again for our listeners, because I think you just hit the nail on the head about, and thank you for normalizing it. I think so many people stay in that mode for a decade because they feel like, oh, something's wrong with me, or I made really bad choices, or how did I end up in this situation? As opposed to recognizing, as you say, it's one of those normal cycles. And totally resonates. You're saying for me, I think it's one of the reasons I started, Women on Purpose and the Art of Feminine Negotiation was I'd had a long career as a lawyer. I'd started as a student and then I became the practitioner, and then I became the master, and I was all fire and brimstone and out. And I think I was at the stage where I was ready to be a sage and start something different.
yeah.
There was a lot of angst around that because,
Oh, totally. Your
yeah, so
identity is wrapped into being a lawyer, especially if it's
yeah,
something prestigious,
yeah,
like
yeah,
being a
true.
lawyer, right?
Yeah,
Or being a pop star.
yeah,
You
yeah,
know, it's like, how do you top that?
yeah,
How do you get off that train
yeah,
without thinking like ma taking a major hit in your self-esteem,
yeah,
you
yeah,
know? So
yeah,
yeah, and
absolutely.
that's and people get really trapped by their success,
Yeah.
basically.
So don't be afraid to reinvent yourself. For our listeners out there, if you're at that stage and you're feeling that discomfort, this is normal. This is a good thing,
Yeah,
and
totally.
be willing to spread your wings. And now you've obviously had great impact over the course of your career as well. And what role, do you think impact does or should have in how we approach negotiating life?
I would say this. I would say it's really different from different people. There are people that are built for scale, right? That's what they were just born like the Elon Musks of this world. Like he's the extreme,
Yeah.
obviously, example, but there are people on that side where they just live and breathe scale.
Yeah.
But I would say everybody is built to have impact.
Yeah.
It just doesn't have to be over the top,
Yes.
right? If you
Yes.
have impact on 100 people who trust you and love you, and all they will swear by you when
Yeah.
it comes to working with you, you have a career.
Yeah.
You have a great career if you
Yeah.
have 100 people who will never work with anybody else because
Yeah.
you're indispensable to them,
Yeah.
right?
Nice.
So, and this is not like going to Mars, but
Yeah.
it's going to make you super happy.
Yeah.
That's sort of what
And
I'm saying, right?
also the impact of that as well. Like as you were saying that when you were saying about scale, some people are built for scale. And I think we often forget even the impact sometimes of just smiling at somebody on the elevator and saying, I
Exactly.
love that
Hmm.
coat, or going up and giving that you never know what somebody's going through in their life, and you may have had a profound impact on that one person. So showing
Yes.
up as the best version of yourself,
Hmm.
I think goes a long way for that. Now you've mentioned creativity a couple times. I'm wondering, what role do you think creativity plays in allowing us to negotiate our best lives, living into the best version of ourselves?
Well, you are naturally creative. Everybody is. So it gets trained out of us
Yes.
in usually in high school,
Yeah.
like if you go into a room of 5-year-olds drawing, whatever little sticky,
Yeah.
sticks for people and cars and stuff, and you ask them, hey, so are you guys artists? And everybody will say, sure.
Yeah. That's true.
You enter the same room when they're 15, 16, no hands were going to go up. Maybe one hand will go up. So it gets trained out of us because the education system we have, if you think about it, the sort of the conveyor belt system, right? It's
Yeah.
this subject, this teacher, this class starts at this time, ends at that class time. There's a ring in the beginning, a ring at the end, maybe one in the middle.
Yeah.
It's all industrial stuff. It was all developed during the Industrial Revolution
Yes.
to actually train, factory workers
Yeah.
and sort of basically to train people how to think and be part of a conveyor belt culture.
Yeah.
And it was useful for the time.
Yeah.
I would just argue that it's maybe not useful for the individual because you were trained to be a cog in the machine, but not a creator,
Yeah.
And so I think inadvertently, all kinds of these sort of ecosystems, they make us cogs into
Yes.
cogs, but I
Yeah.
don't think we're born to be that way,
Yeah.
right? So, and the power of creativity and believing in creativity and even exploring and learning about the creative process, how it works, probably the most liberating thing you can
Yeah.
pursue because it will literally it will give you wings as a lawyer, as an engineer, as a mathematician as
Yeah.
well. The things that you wouldn't think as creative, but everything is creative. Creating a new future, creating a new thing, creating a new substance, a new medicine, a plane, a book, a song, all that's creative process, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So the more creative that you are, the more of a gift you are to those around you, I think.
Yeah. And it's interesting that you speak to about school. I've heard very few other people ever, I think most people aren't aware of how the evolution
Yeah.
of our school system. There's actually a great book out there called Curiosity of School that goes through how sort of
Yeah, yeah.
Russian German model and originally creating sort of militarized, and then when the
Yeah,
Carnegies and that got involved and they started creating a consumer
hmm
sort of society. Very interesting. And I love when you say about creativity. And for our listeners, I say challenge yourself to be creative outside your comfort zone in other areas. And my kids grow, I always thought that was very important. And as you were saying that, I'm laughing, thinking, I remember making my boys when they were quite young, well, all three of my kids, I've got a girl and two boys in that order, and made them write a poem about the Montreal massacre, where all of those women were killed. And you can imagine the reaction of my young boys, right? They're like,
Oh
"Oh
yeah.
my God, Mom, like you're killing me this year." And it's amazing when they sat down and did it, they came up with the most powerful stuff. And I think it opened a little gate that they wouldn't have otherwise gone
Yes,
through.
yes, yes. But imagine, Cindy, imagine if you have a creative practice that is daily.
Yes,
No
absolutely.
matter what you do.
Absolutely.
I
Yeah,
mean, that
yeah,
is life changing, I can
yeah,
guarantee you. It
yeah,
will open up the gift that you are. Your individual creativity is completely unique.
yeah.
So if you're a creative judge, lawyer, doctor,
Yes.
you will develop a reputation and impact
Yeah.
that is completely unique and not comparable to anything
Yeah.
else.
Oh, it's funny you say that because I think people used to, I always threw them off like as a lawyer. And I think because I grew up in a really low income, struggling kind of environment, I approached the law very differently. Like I told stories. I would bring in my family and my opening arguments in my class. And the other side would be going like, what the hell? She's talking about her kids.
That's
But
awesome. That's
it
fantastic.
humanized it for the adjudicator. And I think it was one of the things that really helped.
And people, if you approach it and you give it your full humanity, your full creativity, eventually you'll figure out the kinks, right? The things, okay, this doesn't actually quite work here.
Yeah.
But the good stuff, it's going to shine. And
Yeah.
what's going to happen is you're going to become sought after
Yeah.
as an expert
Yeah.
because of your absolutely unique. You're not a cog.
Yes.
You're indispensable
Yeah.
to
And our
certain
listeners,
people.
I hope you're breathing that in like that. I mean, you're getting so many gold nuggets in this from Christian, frankly. And even that one, if you take it away about imbuing creativity so that you're not like, we spend so much time trying to be like everybody else as opposed to bringing your own unique perspective. Now, I want to make sure we squeeze in as well, because obviously a lot of what you do is high performance coaching. So did you want to share some of your top tips on how to achieve these high performance levels in our life?
Well, on a high level, maybe a couple of things. That on a high level, the stuff that I work on is three things. One is the fuel. I mentioned that already.
Yep.
The second one, sort of in the middle, which is I think it's a really important to understand the continuum of things, is momentum.
Mhm.
Momentum is a funny thing. When you first, let's say, out of law school, you first start working, there's a lot of momentum because your trajectory is simple, you're unburdened. You're unburdened with even honestly, sometimes with wisdom. You're unburdened with wisdom. It's better because you move.
Yeah.
You move faster. And then what happens with professionals a lot of the time is that complexity sets in. It could be everything. It could be family, marriage, parenting, a mortgage, financial obligations, more responsibility, more at stake. Momentum classically starts slowing down and then people just stop
Yeah.
or go in circles or hit a wall, whatever version,
Yep.
and that's lack of momentum. In essence, that's lack of momentum. So to me, what's super important is to understand how do you gain momentum. That's a huge thing that we do. How do you move?
Yeah.
Because moving gives you life, creativity, self-esteem. Moving, it doesn't have to be super fast, but you have to move.
Yeah.
How does movement look like? What's the direction? What do you have to say no to start moving again? That kind of thing. So
Yeah.
that's the second piece that's huge. And momentum is a massive thing and it compounds. And sometimes people are so in the same place for a decade they don't even know how to feel how that feels like. And then when they do,
Yeah.
wow, it feels amazing. Like they got
Yeah.
their life back, right?
Yeah.
And then the third piece is basically authority, how to scale what you have to offer to
Hmm.
people. And so it's building your personal brand. And personal brand is it's a scary thing for people going, I'm not a brand.
Yeah.
Everybody has a brand. You have a
Yeah.
brand. Your brand is your reputation. That's
Yeah.
basically it. And so if the best you have to offer doesn't have recognition, it doesn't have this, then your brand is invisible.
Yeah.
Being invisible is a terrible, terrible thing. It's a loss for the people who are at home praying for somebody just like you. You
Yeah.
know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So those are the three pieces, the fuel that gets you there, that drives you, purifying it. In the middle, it's momentum, moving, 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 because it's compounds. It means everything. There's so many benefits, side benefits to it. And then building a brand and authority impact is also super important because it's so primal for us to want to desire to serve people. Okay, how do you do that better? How do you serve more people? How do you do more good? And there's a strategy behind it, and sometimes you're just go, I wish I had more impact. Well, there's a strategy behind it. You can build it.
Yeah. Beautiful. All right. So, and for our listeners out there, if you're looking for some high performance coaching, then make sure to follow up. And I want to give you a chance to tell us quick about your podcast as well, Headspace. What's that about?
Oh, sure. So it's basically a newsletter and a podcast. And it's basically my way to, okay, this is an illustration of authority and personal brand, right? So I have something, I serve my clients as a very small group of people. How do I serve anybody? I write about it, I talk about it, I invite experts.
Yeah.
That's how I do it, right? That's scalable.
Yeah.
So I can write one thing from my heart, the best that I have to offer, and put it in a newsletter, and 8,000 people read it
Yeah.
every week, twice a week. 8,000 people read that. That is scalable reputation. So if you listen to this and you go, you know what, Christian has something that I need. Well, I can serve you literally for free. Just go to christianrayflores.com, subscribe. We have a free issue. If you want to go deeper, there's a paid issue. It's going to cost you a whopping $9 a month. $9 a month
Can change your life.
for deep dives, right?
Yeah.
So what a cool thing to be able to offer to people. Same thing with podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, that kind of thing, right? So this is an illustration of authority and of personal brand. I can serve you for free.
Yeah.
And then obviously if you want to come closer and work with me directly, it's going to be much more costly, but you don't have to. But sometimes people go, you know what, I really need this.
Yeah.
And then they go to my
It's fine.
coaching
Yeah.
the website, they look at the dimensionality of it and go, okay, I want to talk to you, that kind of thing. So,
Yeah. And what inspired you to write your book? Tell us quick about that. And what's one of the most surprising things that you discovered while either in the researching process or in the writing of your book?
okay, so the book is called, it just came out Christmas, so pre-election, just for you to know.
Yeah.
For those of you who can be triggered by the title, little, it's called Little Book of Big Reasons to Love America. And the subtitle is a love letter from an immigrant. And
Wow.
basically the book it's very subjective, and I'm not an expert and I'm not a historian, but I'm one guy
Yeah.
who has a perspective. And I grew up all over the world in places that were not free, very oppressive, low opportunity, all kinds of restrictions. And coming into the United States, I was actually inspired by the American spirit.
Yeah.
And I would say it's a North American spirit. It's not just America,
Yeah.
US, but it's
Right.
Canada as
Yeah.
well. Very, very similar DNA, cultural DNA about opportunity, about entrepreneurship, about faith, about philanthropy. That it's almost like a cocktail of things that came together, right? It's a beautiful dish, and it produces the most prosperous nation on earth. And I basically explore that as an outsider, right?
Yeah.
So there's all kinds of stories and pictures. It's like full of color. There's a QR code. You can watch videos of stories that couldn't even fit in the book. So anyway, so it's a creative process. And to answer your question about, okay, what is a surprising thing? It really gave me, it's probably the reason why my newsletter became very disciplined and very high quality
Yeah.
and has like 12,000 subscribers right now as we
Yeah.
speak.
Wow.
It's because I developed this creative rhythm of 5 o'clock in the morning for 9 months. I write
Yeah.
every day. 5 o'clock in the morning for 9 months, I write.
Wow.
And whether I write a lot, whether it's good or whether it's terrible, I still show up and I do it. And it gave me a muscle, a superpower of writing and communicating ideas in ways that are concise, polished, etc. So that's like a surprising byproduct of the thing. It actually gave me almost like this new creative muscle.
Yeah. Well, and you've just inspired me.
Hmm.
I'm stuck in my next book, and I am you have inspired me and challenged me that I am going to take up that gauntlet and start having that disciplined time. I think it makes a profound difference. Well,
It
this
really
has
does,
been
yeah.
so interesting. I wish, as you said, we could talk for hours. I'm going to have you back, actually. Open
Thank
to
you,
a Christian.
Cindy.
I think there's so many other, little avenues we could have explored here, and so much to mine. I normally end by asking, what's one of the greatest mindset shifts that you've had in your life? Doesn't have to be on this topic, on what we talked about, just one of those aha moments that made you see things differently.
Okay, so that's a good question. I think one of the biggest ones was I was at the peak of my career. I was playing sports arenas, and I had so much trouble with romance because I had this deep-seated fear of marriage and commitment, and I would basically undermine and sabotage every romantic relationship I had, like just like clockwork. And I would be a jerk. I would drive people away.
Yeah.
And then my girlfriend at the time, she got pregnant. We had a baby.
Yeah.
Oh, what do you do with that? And I acted the same way, and I was horrible. I was
Yeah.
just so ashamed of it.
Yeah.
And she left, and she cut me off my daughter. Like
Yeah.
she, no communication, moved to another country. And that just was this massive shake up of my soul.
Yeah.
And I met this Canadian missionary, by the way. His name is Andy Fleming, Canadian missionary in Russia.
Wow.
And I came to his house, and he had this incredible family. And I come from three generations of broken homes. No one taught me.
Yeah.
I don't know how to build a family.
Yeah.
I just don't know. Nobody taught me. And I was looking at Andy and his Canadian. He had these Canadian gloves with like the leaf on it, like
Yeah.
super ugly. And he was a character, and he's still one of my best friends. And I said, "How do I get what you have?" And he said, and I was completely
Yeah.
non-faith based, like very, I mean, grew up as an atheist.
Yeah.
He says, "Look, if you allow me to tell you from scripture, I can help you." And I'm like very skeptical. And I guess the shift was that there is ancient wisdom. It exists that really does supersede modern
Yeah.
perceptions and cultural trends and what you think is right and wrong. That they're almost like this. There's a universal moral law out there that you can, if you just have the humility to tap in and explore, you can import that, and it's foundationally true.
Yeah.
You know, and that cured me, and it was unbelievable to me that you can do that. And that's part of the reason I am a coach now, is
Yeah.
because one person can redirect your life.
Yeah.
And
Amazing.
basically from that, I mean, it took me 2, 3 years to sort of get my like heal and almost like get a new set of lenses
Yeah.
about romance and marriage. And I've been now married for 25 years, very, very
Right.
happily. My
Yeah.
children love me. They don't resent me.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jesus. But basically,
Yeah.
that's the point. The point is that there's a moral law
Yeah.
that is available to anybody.
Yeah.
And your past trauma, dysfunction, the stuff that just sticks with you, it can all be taken away.
Yeah. And I love that you speak to that ancient wisdom. I think in our modern culture, we forget that. And you look
Yeah.
at First Nations people, I mean, so much of their lost practices were foundationally true and valuable, and we let it go. So
And they're still true
yes,
today.
absolutely.
And we
Yeah.
just ignore them, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So
absolutely.
where can people learn more about you, Christian? Where do you want me to send them?
Go to christianrayflores.com. That's the newsletter. That's probably the easiest way to connect. And then if you feel like, okay, I'm moved so much, I want to talk to this guy, go to exponential.life. Exponential is spelled without an E, starts with an X. And
Okay.
that's basically where sort of the coaching stuff lives. And you can just
Awesome.
take a look, see if it's interesting. If that, you can reach out basically.
And don't panic to our listeners. If you're driving or otherwise not able to take that down, we'll make sure to put it in the show notes. So check that out. And again, Christian, thank you. It's been just a really interesting conversation with so much. You speak about ancient wisdom. You seem to embody that. So thank you for sharing.
Cindy, those are very kind words. Thank you.
And for our listeners, I have no doubt you got lots of value from this episode. If you were listening at all, there were just so many great nuggets. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't done that yet. And share this episode with other people who could benefit from this. And frankly, there are so many valuable nuggets here on how to live into your best life. So please do share that with other people. And before we sign off, just wanted to share some ways. If you are looking to up-level your negotiation skills and negotiate your better life, I've got everything from my one-on-one mastermind to online to VIP experiences. And if that's interesting to you at all, check it out at artoffemininenegotiation.com. And that is a wrap for this episode. So until next time, go forth and negotiate your best life on your terms so you can stop missing out and start getting more of what you want and deserve from the boardroom to the bedroom. Until next time, take care.